All right, fifth grade, happy Monday. We are going to start kind of looking more into Watson's Go to Birmingham. We're going to start reading it on Wednesday. Wednesday is when we'll start reading, but I do want to do some more predictions today, okay? I'm going to do a little reading for you. There's going to be a little video that I want you to watch. It's a small clip from the movie. It's a scene from the movie, also the book that we'll read about, and just kind of do some predictions about a few things. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to predict about in this book is the setting. Okay, so two things. When does this story take place? Do we think? And where, right? That's the setting. The when and the where of a story. So we're going to do some predictions. We're going to read the first page of the book, give ourselves a little spoiler, and kind of give some predictions about when the story takes place and when. Okay. Then we'll actually look at where the story takes place. I have 2 stars. We are going to put 1 star where the story takes place in the beginning and where they're going, right? So we know that the Watsons go to Birmingham, right? That's what the name of the story is. So we know that they do go to Birmingham. And so 1 is where we'll start, and then the second one is in Birmingham where they end up. Okay. Then we'll watch a video here. You'll watch this on your own. I will not watch this with you. And then we'll do some predictions about the characters. Okay? And then last, we'll read the back of the book, and we will discuss the plot, right? So what happens in the story? What are some predictions? Okay? So, first, let's define what it means to predict. Okay, so obviously we're talking about predictions. Maybe you've heard of this word before. Maybe you've even used this word before. But it is important. It is important to know what it means before we start talking about it today. Okay, so to predict, let's put a little color on the border here. Okay, to predict is to say that something will happen in the future. Okay, so a prediction is something that will happen in the future, and to predict is to say that something will happen, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to predict what is going to happen when we read the story here. What's going to happen in this book. Okay? So let's start here with the setting, okay? The when and the where. All right, now, when do we think that this story takes place? I want you to stop for a second. Think about what the book is called. Okay? And let's think for a second when we think the story takes place. Okay? This one's pretty easy because it's actually in the title, right? The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. So, when do you think the story takes place? I think the story takes place in 1963. 1963. It's hard to know exactly what months, weeks, what seasons it takes place, but we will read here, okay? You might get a little bit of a better idea. And we're also going to read this here and think about the where. So, chapter 1, and you wonder why we get called the Weird Watsons. It was one of those super duper cold Saturdays. One of those days that when you breathed out your breath, kind of hung frozen in the air, like a hunk of smoke. And you could walk along and look exactly like a train blowing out big, fat, white puffs of smoke. It was so cold that if you were stupid enough to go outside, your eyes would automatically blink 1,000 times, all by themselves, probably so the juice inside of them wouldn't freeze up. It was so cold that if you spit, the slob would be an ice cube before it hit the ground. It was about a zillion degrees below zero. Obviously, these are some hyperboles, right? That's not possible. It was even cold inside our house. We put sweaters and hats and scarves and 3 pairs of socks on and still were cold. The thermostat was turned all the way up and the furnace was banging and sounding like it was about to blow up, but it still felt like Jack Frost had moved in with us. All of my family sat real close together on the couch under a blanket. Dad said this would generate a little heat. Stop there. I didn't want to give us too much away. But that is the first page of Watsons Go to Birmingham. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to tell me where do you think this story takes place. Okay, a couple different ideas here. You can say, I think this story takes place in? Give us a guess. Okay. Obviously somewhere where it's a little colder. Somewhere where it is not super warm. I mean, it sounds kind of like this winter, how cold it is there. So, obviously very cold. So you tell me. I think this story takes place in? You tell me. Okay. Now let's move on to this slide here. If you're still worrying about this one here, working on this, you can pause. And let's continue here. So what we're going to do is we are going to first take this first star. We're going to drag it. And we're going to put it where it needs to go, where this family is from. Okay? This family is from Flint, Michigan. So we'll take the star here, and we're going to go find Michigan up here. If you see, here's Michigan. Michigan is interesting because there's two parts of Michigan. There's this kind of one way up here, and then this one that looks kind of like a mitten. All right, so where Flint is, it's kind of right below the thumb of Michigan right there. Okay, a little north of Detroit. Maybe you've heard of that city before. But there's Flint. Okay. Then, second one, we are going to drop this where Birmingham is. Okay, Birmingham is in Alabama. I'm going to go down here to the south part of the United States. You can see here's Alabama. Then kind of right in the middle there. I know it's kind of hard to see. It's a little small. But Birmingham. Okay, so I will zoom in here. There is Flint. Okay. They didn't have Flint on this map. They didn't put the name Flint, but that's where it is. All right, we'll go down here to the south part of the United States, and there is Birmingham. Okay, so a couple different things that are going to happen here. They are going to go through cities like, looks like this is Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Louisville, Nashville, and then all the way down here to Birmingham. A lot of funny things that happen along the way that we will read about. Okay, but that's all you need to do on that slide. Just kind of get an idea of where they're going. Okay, tomorrow we'll talk about 1963 and why that's so important and how the United States looked. Today, it's not a big deal to just drive along the interstate to a new state. Not a big deal, right? We're not worried about that. Back in 1963, especially as an African-American family, it was very scary. Okay, and we'll talk about that before we start reading. Okay. I am going to pause here. I want you to watch this video. It's a little clip, and we will discuss some of the characters that we hear about, all right? All right, so hopefully after that video, you came up with the same thing that I kind of came up with here. Who are some of the characters that we know are in the story? So we have Kenny. He's the one in the glasses that was talking. Byron's the one who is the older brother, it looks kind of like. He is the one who got his lip stuck to the window, who's kissing his reflection. Kenny said something about how Byron had embarrassed him in front of Buphead. So that's a character in the story. I don't know if we get to see much about him. Joetta looks like it's the little sister. Then of course we have Mom and Dad. So it looks like they called them Mama and Dad. Now I want you to tell me. It's no right answer right now. These are predictions. Who do we think the main character is? I think the main character is. You tell me. Okay, which one out of these ones here? Kenny, Byron, Buphead, Joetta, Mama, or Dad? Do you think is the main character? You tell me. Okay, and then last, all right, plot. Now, if you need any help, if you are stuck here or you need to think a little bit more, you can pause. Keep on going here, though. So, plot. Now, remember, plot are just the things that happen in the story, right? So, in Holes, we talked about how, Stanley coming to camp, Stanley meeting, making friends, Stanley getting the treasure. Those are all parts of the plot, things that happen. Okay, so the first question that I have for you is, what do you think this family does in the story? And then what is one extra prediction that you have about the story? What is another thing you think might happen? Okay, and in this, what I'm going to do is I am going to read you the back cover of the book. All right, so enter the hilarious world of 10-year-old Kenny and his family, the Weird Watsons of Flint, Michigan. There's Mama, Dad, little sister Joetta, and brother Byron, who's 13 and an official juvenile delinquent. Ooh, means he's a troublemaker. When Mama and Dad decide it's time for a visit to Grandma, Dad comes home with the amazing Ultraglide, and the Watsons set out on a trip like no other. They're heading south. They're going to Birmingham, Alabama, toward one of the darkest moments in America's history. Interesting. Okay, so the first thing that I think that this family is probably going to be doing, well, we know they go to Birmingham. I think the family is visiting Grandma Birmingham. Okay, I think that the family's visiting grandma in Birmingham, Alabama. All right, that's what I think that this family is going to be doing. It says in the title they're going to Birmingham. We find out from the back of the book. It's time for a visit to grandma. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to tell me one other prediction that you think might happen in the story. Okay, give you a couple different ideas here so you can kind of think about this. First, we do know that Byron is officially a juvenile delinquent, which means he's a troublemaker. Okay, a few other things that we know. Looks like they do go to grandma's house in Birmingham. Okay, looks like Kenny is 10 years old and they're the Weird Watsons, a weird family. Looks like they are going to Birmingham toward one of the darkest moments in American history. Okay, so now with all of that information that I've just told you, some things that we've seen today, maybe some looking back at this video here, maybe seeing, the first page of the story, I want you to tell me one more prediction that you have about what is going to happen in this story. All right, if anything is confusing here, you're stuck on any of these questions, make sure that you show up at office hours at 10:05, and I will be there to help you out. Okay, I'll either see you then or I will see you at our Google Meet.